Hello again, I'm back, and today we'll be discussing volumes 3, 4, and 5, inspired by some intriguing meta I recently stumbled on. But first, and as always, I'd like to thank my wonderful patrons for making these episodes possible. So, first and foremost, I'd note that later volumes 2 have been plenty confronting, dealing even more directly and deeply with issues of abuse, trauma, deception, and how a person may be good to you, but that doesn't make them a good person. Let alone overarching confrontations regarding morality or themes on the importance of hope and the underlying matter about the nature of stories. But right now I want to focus on these early to middle volumes for the interesting show-to-audience message that needed to try and convey. Less about themes and more about story structure, so let's get some quick perfunctory stuff out of the way. The first two volumes established Beacon, the college environment, the somewhat mini-arc-centered structure blending adventure with more mundane stuff, all while hinting at something more but not going all out on it. Until Volume 3. That's when the character's new home is destroyed, the illusion of adult competence is ripped off like a band-aid, and the very real potential for defeat and harm is crystallized, all while opening up the main plot, such as it is. That's a big deal, but it's also not something that can happen again. Even in Volume 8, with the villains getting their main objective, the ability to overwhelm the audience with such things is absent. This isn't critique, it's just fact. With the college/school trappings gone, the true genre of the show is revealed, but the intensity of V3's climax can't be maintained. Even just on a pure audience engagement level, that kind of writing would be exhausting and it wouldn't be reflective of the series overall. This isn't 40k once the people in love with Grimdark took over. In this regard, Volume 4's tone and story structure and general focuses serve as calibration for the show's new direction. Not only are we in a new era of RWBY in terms of storytelling, but we also have more time to make episodes longer, bigger budgets, and more materials to make the world feel bigger. It becomes less of a prologue and more of a story. The pace slows a bit because there's time to breathe now. We spend more time focusing on characters and introspection. The utilization of showing over telling is increased, demanding more audience engagement, while also granting them the tools to actually be engaged. Action is still important and will continue improving, but it will become more tightly wound with the story and be used even more as a medium for conveying characters and storied conflicts. That is not to say it was ever just spectacle, but the fights gain more narrative weight as the show itself grows weightier and the new layers of genre are introduced. I would also hasten to note none of this was not planned. Volume 3 was set up from the early days. Salem was the 5th character invented. Monty Oom was on record saying he liked characters to be introduced and then revealed depth over time as circumstances dictate. It was a planned evolution. Taking the cast from their mostly safe academy environment under such harsh circumstances forced layers as of yet unseen to reveal themselves. However, such layers were always hinted at, laying the groundwork for what was to come, as well as the changes that would come from that. That isn't to say it was all perfect. I have some contentions with how Blake and Yang's trauma was handled in Volume 4, for instance, and while RWBY's affection for long-form storytelling does work, it can at times make certain decisions hard to engage with in the moment. But A, no show is perfect, and if anyone says otherwise, they are lying to you, and B, this is a positive piece, so let's talk about Volume 5. I seriously loved Volume 5. The added focus on Blake and Yang may play a part in that, my bitterness about Sienna Khan notwithstanding. RT, if you're watching, I will pay you to bring her back. Moving on. I recently saw someone describe Volume 5 as the Dragon Age 2 of RWBY. In their own words, it was largely panned when first introduced due to linearity, similar environments, and combat not being as epic as in other installments. In the latter case, I'd note that I think people hyperfixate on the training montage and the Haven battle as opposed to something like, say, the Maiden Brawl. There is also obviously the theft of Thuns to consider, but that's its own thing. But on the former points, well, even ignoring my pre-established arguments about the deeper character engagement, interaction, and development, I also think they are somewhat unfounded. Volume 2, after all, spent a good chunk of its time dedicated to a dance and low-stakes stuff. Meanwhile, Volume 5's domestic stuff helped re-establish relationships, show character development, pass out some drama, and set up contentions with Ozpin for the next volume. Plus there was the entirety of Ilya's arc, the glory of "your mom kidnapped me," the high emotional stakes of the Haven battle, lots of character development, plus, and again, laying the groundwork for heavy revelations next volume while being weighty and intense in their own time. If I had to say why it might be deemed an issue to some, I'd likely say it involved people still adjusting to the new volume's pacing. Volume 2 was relatively short and with similar percentage of time spent on these things, but comparatively rushed. Volume 5 was able to take the time to explore these things in more depth, but that does necessitate a slower pace, both for believability and quality. But let's get down to brass tacks. Volume 3 tore away the curtain for the cast and setting. Volume 4 established the new tone and expanded the world. Volume 5 paid off and set up important character and story beats. With that in mind, Volume 6 was another heavy revelations volume, similar to Volume 3 in terms of upending the characters and heroes' understanding of the setting. After all, this is where the adults' failures finally led them to fall into a total heap. Ozpin's deceptions were revealed and he fled. Crow collapsed in on himself. Maria was great, but serves more as a reality check than divining or driving force. And while we ended on an optimistic note, the tension in Argus are but a taste of what's to come. I definitely think each volume has had successive growths. Volume 6 is probably one of the most balanced volumes in terms of character, combat, world, and plot revelations. But RWBY continues growing, challenging, and trying to engage its audience, and I expect it will continue to do so, and I'm glad for it. Honestly, it spoiled me for a lot of other shows that are less experimental and dynamic. Anyway, that's all for today. Oh, and if you'd like to help out with episodes or commission 3D models, please swing by my Patreon or Ko-fi for scripts, early uploads, models, and more. For now though, thanks for stopping by.